Something unique that Naruto made big, and has been further used by other series like Jujutsu Kaisen and even referenced in games like Undertale, are eye techniques, also known as dojutsu. And there are no dojutsu more familiar to us than the Sharingan, so I thought, why not go over that with ya? The Sharingan Explained.
Welcome to the Amagi! Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on our social media. Let's reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. YouTube's been unsubscribing users from channels lately, so if you're a fan of us, please do us a favor and double check to see if you're still subscribed. It only takes a second, and it helps us a ton here at Amagi. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video.
The Sharingan, funnily enough, is not a natural dojutsu that the Otsutsuki possess. Not like the Byakugan, which is by far the most common of all dojutsu. So much so that it acts as the natural eyes of most Otsutsuki. Even Hagoromo Otsutsuki was displayed as having a Byakugan. The Sharingan was first seen in canon by Indra Otsutsuki, but was further shown as being used by Hagoromo too through the filler episodes of Naruto. So what is the Sharingan? Well, to know the Sharingan, one must know its history and where it came from. So let's start from the top and work our way down. The first form of the Sharingan to ever appear was the Rinne Sharingan. Some people treat the Rinnegan and its parent dojutsu as evolutions of the Sharingan, but this isn't true, as much as it is to say that the Sharingan is just the watered-down version of the Rinnegan. The Rinne Sharingan was originally used by the Ten Tails, but upon absorbing the Ten Tails, this dojutsu awakened atop Kaguya Otsutsuki's forehead. She used it to cast a genjutsu over the world called the Infinite Tsukiyomi. This was due to how she was being hunted. You see, Kaguya first came to Earth with Ishiki Otsutsuki to cultivate a god tree and harvest a chakra fruit to give to a higher family in the Otsutsuki. It seems that the Otsutsuki function very similarly to the Hyuga clan, with branch and main families, with the branch families being expected to serve and even die for the main family. When the god tree is planted, it begins to suck up not only all of the chakra of the living beings in the world, but genetic information as well. However, before it can reach completion, the god tree requires a sacrifice, one of Otsutsuki blood. That was why Kaguya was here. The fruit was not for her, but instead she was designed to be the sacrifice that would finish the cultivation of the god tree. The process generally has allowances though. In exchange for volunteering one's body, the Otsutsuki is allowed to find a suitable subject to plant a karma seal on, which ensures that after the sacrifice, they can straddle the afterlife and possess the body of whoever they marked with their karma. This gives them a range of effects over the marked individual. As time passes, that seal that was placed on them will slowly alter the user's DNA, turning them into a near-direct clone of the user. A person becomes a clone because of the way their genetics were altered by the karma seal. Interestingly enough, this technique makes Boruto more connected to Momoshiki than anyone. Despite being born from Hinata and Naruto, his DNA is anywhere between 70 to 99% Momoshiki's, meaning Momoshiki is more family to Boruto now than even his own parents. Big Daddy Momoshiki. I'll let that rest in your mind for a bit. But anyway, Kaguya was to plant a karma seal on someone and then throw herself into the god tree, but she decided not to, and instead killed Ishiki, who barely survived by planting a seal on a wandering monk named Jigen. Kaguya then continued cultivating the god tree, and let it be while she proceeded to go down and live among the humans. She ended up in the land of ancestors, where she became not only the concubine to the emperor, but conceived with him two twins who would later become Hagoromo and Hamada Otsutsuki. However, a war was about to break out over a land dispute, and representatives of the land of that were there to negotiate. The emperor decreed that none would touch the representatives, and should anyone attack them, they would be killed. Well, turns out that the representatives were real sleazebags and began to assault Kaguya, who defended herself. However, doing this had broken the emperor's rule, and he gave the order to have her executed. But she and her handmaiden then ran. As they fled, the handmaiden was killed. Scared and angry, Kaguya made her way back to the god tree, where she ate the chakra fruit and gained substantial chakra. After this, she developed the Rinne Sharingan on her forehead, which she used to cast the Infinite Tsukiyomi, which put everyone to sleep. She used nativity of a world of trees to help feed the Ten Tails. However, Kaguya, in her heart, did not want humanity to die out, so she released some of them and wiped their memory of her and the tree, likely using omnipotence, like Momoshiki hinted had happened in the past. From there, she lived among the humans, no longer as a servant or concubine, but as their rabbit goddess. Eventually, the time came that she should give birth, and she delivered two babies. Sons. Twins. The eldest she named Hagoromo, and the youngest she named Hamada. At one point, the two boys grew and eventually found themselves opposed to her, which broke her heart. She saw it as a betrayal and decided that she would reclaim her chakra from them. To that end, she mortally wounded Hamada, which caused Hagoromo's Sharingan he had to awaken into Mangekyo Sharingan, and once more into Rinnegan. With eyes much like his mother's, he and his brother managed to use the Six Paths Chibaku Tensei to trap Kaguya in the moon forever, stripping her of her tailed beasts, which Hagoromo decided to house in himself, also causing him to develop a Rinne Sharingan. Hamada would live on the moon with his clan to guard his mother, while Hagoromo would live on Earth alongside his own clan. Then the time came and he too was a father. He gave birth to two boys, twins, Indra and Ashura. Poor Ashura did not possess his father's eyes or skills or really anything, but he did possess his father's heart. Indra, on the other hand, while not possessing of his father's heart, possessed everything else, including the Sharingan, the direct derivative of the Rinnegan. It was Black Zetsu, the holder of Kaguya's will, who taught Indra how to awaken his Sharingan as a Mangekyo Sharingan. This resulted in Indra taking his closest friends and murdering them just to feel the pain and sorrow of loss that would cause his Sharingan to mutate. This gave him tremendous strength with which he used to attack his father and brother upon learning that he would not become the next Sage of Six Paths. Ashura, despite having been initially weaker, was gifted with his father's Six Paths Sage mode and other various abilities like the Six Paths Kunitsukami, which he used to battle and defeat his brother Susanoo. This, of course, led to a war between the clans descended from Ashura and Indra, the Senju and the Uchiha clans. The Uchiha bore the Sharingan, but none were as fearsome as Madara and his brother Izuna. Both awakened their Sharingan, but upon his deathbed, Izuna bequeathed his brother his eyes, which Madara used to become the first Uchiha to ever achieve the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Madara's abilities did not stop there. Upon grafting some of Hashirama Senju's DNA to his, he also managed to awaken the Rinnegan. From there, I'm sure you know the rest of the story. That is the story of the dojutsu family tree up to the founding of the village. The Rinne Sharingan and all other dojutsu derived from it are descended from Kaguya and Hagoromo. Now, a common misconception that many people have is that Hagoromo possessed the Rinne Sharingan. Kishimoto never really went deep into the red mark on the sage's forehead, so many people believed it to be a marking or a tattoo of some sort. Despite it being filler, an explanation is given. This mark only appears once Hagoromo awakens his Rinnegan, and immediately after this, he uses the tag the Toad Sage gave to him to restore Hamada. He then turns to his mother and informs him that he also awakened his Rinnegan and Mangekyo Sharingan. This insinuates that the mark on Hagoromo's forehead is not actually a Rinne Sharingan and is also not a tattoo, as he mentions his Mangekyo Sharingan immediately after awakening it. This further explains why Indra did not gain Rinnegan in his lifespan. His father simply did not have the Rinne Sharingan from which it descended, or the extra powerful Six Paths chakra like his mother had. Now, let's get into our deeper explanations of what these dojutsu are. The Rinne Sharingan. The Rinne Sharingan, also known as the Samsara Copy Wheel Eye if directly translated to English, was the first of this family to appear, with all others being a direct descendant and watered-down version of it. Not much is known about the Rinne Sharingan except that it was first awakened by Kaguya after she ate the chakra fruit from the god tree. This dojutsu is also shared by the Ten Tails, of which Sasuke has at least once mentioned as a Rinnegan. Whether this is an error on Sasuke's part, Kishimoto's part, or if the author is merely trying to tell us that it's all the same is unknown. However, the difference between the Rinne Sharingan and the Rinnegan is really ambiguous, especially when considering the similarities to Sasuke's Rinnegan, which in some media was actually considered a Rinne Sharingan. Sasuke's Rinnegan only appears in one eye and possesses the Tomoe within it, though it only possesses 6 as opposed to Kaguya and the Ten Tails 9. Furthermore, this difference is confusing when one sees Momoshiki Otsutsuki or Nightmare Fuel Urashiki power up and gain a single Rinnegan in their forehead. To be fair, Momoshiki has also got a set on his hands, but the point remains. They look very similar. It's assumed that the Rinne Sharingan possesses the same abilities as the standard Rinnegan. However, it is confirmed that it can do one thing that the Rinnegan cannot do. That is use the Infinite Tsukiyomi. The Infinite Tsukiyomi is a technique exclusive to all Rinne Sharingan and cannot be cast by a regular Rinnegan, though a Rinnegan does offer resistance to this genjutsu, as displayed by Sasuke through his usage of the Rinnegan. There's a special technique that Kaguya displays. Madara does not display this ability with his Rinne Sharingan. That isn't to say he can't use it, as he likely saw no reason to use it, but for now let's assume that he doesn't since he never displayed it to my knowledge. This means that Kaguya's version of this dojutsu, much like all other Rinnegan, means that she developed a new ability separate from the Six Paths abilities. Of course, I'm talking about her usage of Ame no Minaka. This ability allows her to use a glorified teleportation technique. However, instead of teleporting to a new dimension, instead they teleport another dimension to themselves. It's said to be a technique that requires insane levels of chakra, and was so amazing and awe-inspiring that Kakashi had a hard time believing that it was true at all, and assumed it was merely some form of genjutsu. The Rinnegan. The Rinnegan is the most well-known out of the entire family of dojutsu due to its legendary status and feats. Among Naruto fans and Naruto characters, the Rinnegan is the creme de la creme of dojutsu, and who wouldn't think so? If we didn't assume that the Rinne Sharingan could do what the Rinnegan can, then the dojutsu becomes ass and is only useful for putting the world to sleep. The Rinnegan was not only freaking beautiful, but it also possessed a lot of abilities that just seem pretty hacks if you think about it. There's a reason why those possessing a Rinnegan are said to either be a god of creation or god of destruction. That's because the powers are so hacks that a single guy with minimal training was able to literally blink away an entire village. I mean, imagine Superman's heat vision if it were just nuclear weapons. I'm talking category 57 level wins. It's called Almighty Push, or the Shinra Tensei, and it's a part of the Diva Path class of abilities that the Rinnegan possesses. And the Diva Path is only one of 6 paths that you can use, plus a bonus secret 7th path, and at least one extra ability that just exists because you weren't broken enough. The Rinnegan has great visual prowess, but guess what? You can still obstruct its vision. That's right, boys and girls, Konoha could have survived and beaten pain if they had just set off all their smoke bombs at once. But anyway, the first path that we'll start with is the Diva Path. It's by far the most memorable, and was the path that Nagato attached to his sentimentality vessel, Yahiko. This ability controls attractive and repulsive forces, essentially gravity. The user cannot switch between these easily, and a cooldown is required, so each version receives its own technique name. First is Bansho Tenin. The direct English translation is Heavenly Attraction of All Creation, but the localized name that you might know, which is like 1,000 times easier to remember, is Universal Pull. Think of it like when Luke used the Force to pull his lightsaber to him in the Wampa's cave. It's like that, but you can use it on people too. The counterpart to this technique is Shinra Tensei, which literally translates to Heavenly Subjugation of the Omnipresent God. For those who don't want to bite their tongue, we just call it Almighty Push, because that's what it does. It pushes things. It's what Pain used to evaporate Konoha. Then there is the Chibaku Tensei, literally meaning heavenly body bursting from the earth. But you could also use the localized name Planetary Devastation. This technique starts when the user claps their hands together and creates a black sphere called a singularity, which begins to suck masses of stone, rock, and other terrestrial stuff into it, forming a large meteorite that appears like a miniature moon. I don't recall if it was ever confirmed as this, but essentially you take a mini black hole which pulls everything to it to create this orb. There is a true version of this technique, which is basically the regular one, just bigger. Then you have your 6 Paths Chibaku Tensei, which technically isn't from the Rinnegan, but was worth mentioning. This version comes from the hand seals that the bearers of the 6 Paths chakra get. When something or someone is tagged with this technique, it creates a Chibaku Tensei so large that it becomes lunar-sized. In fact, this technique was used in Naruto to create the universe's version of the moon. You tired yet? Well, buckle up, we've still got 5 more plus 1 paths to go over. After the Diva Path, we get the Ashura Path, which itself possesses 3 techniques. The Ashura Path grants control over one's body and allows one to transform themselves into a slightly creepy-looking cyborg with 6 arms and 3 faces. The first attack that this path has is, funnily enough, just called the Ashura attack. Basically, you open your body up to show a big-ass cannon that fires chakra like a laser. The second attack is known as Flaming Arrow Warhead, and basically what this means is that the user now produces heat-seeking missiles. Even if damaged heavily, someone using the Ashura Path can create missiles. The last big technique of this path is Flaming Arrow of Amazing Ability, but we laymen like to call it Rocket Fist. No, Rocket Fist is not the official name, it's something more like Bazooka Hand or something, but it's close enough and you already know what it does. You're just a shinobi of the leaf living your best life, and then uh-oh, here comes a giant fist. After Ashura comes the Human Path. This path only has 1 ability, and Nagato tends to consider this path useless and is quick to sacrifice it. Why? I don't know, because it's one of the most busted abilities he has. It literally grabs your soul and pulls it out, killing you. And if that isn't enough, any intel you have immediately becomes Nagato's. GG Shinobi. Could have been worse though, you could have been captured by the Naraka Path. Speaking of the Naraka Path, this path makes use of a summon known as the King of Hell. Essentially, what happens is the Naraka Path asks you a question and you better answer him truthfully, because if you don't, or you lie, the King of Hell will rip out both your soul and your tongue. Besides this, the King of Hell can be used to transport bodies and souls, as well as repair any damage to any of the other paths thrown into it. Essentially, this path can interrogate. Maybe not as efficiently as the human path or as final, but it does so in a far more brutal manner, and also serves as the medic. But let's forget Naraka Path for a time and move on to something a little nicer. How about the Animal Path? The Animal Path is essentially summoning at its core. It can summon giant drill-beaked bird, giant multi-headed dog, giant snake-tailed chameleon, giant panda, giant ox, giant rhino, giant crustacean, and a giant centipede. It can also summon the other paths of pain if it so decided, and logically anything else it has a contract with. Difference is, the giant summons it automatically comes with seem to resurrect upon death, as they do seem to be capable of being used more than once, even if killed. After the Animal Path is the Preta Path, which has the ability to absorb chakra and techniques, not too similar from Momoshiki's Rinnegan as well as Boruto's Karma Seal. This technique can be used to absorb any chakra whatsoever, including Sage Chakra, which can be a danger. When used loosely, Nagato accidentally turned his Preta Path to stone when it attempted to absorb Naruto's chakra. Madara, on the other hand, used the same technique to absorb Sage Chakra from Hashirama Senju, but he knew when to stop, and even managed to make use of Sage Mode rather easily. I don't know if this is due to Madara just being a prodigy, or if this is part of the quick learning that those with the Rinnegan gain. Last but not least, we have the Outer Path. This path has access to a few extra things, such as the summoning of the Ghetto statue, which it can then use to send a chakra dragon out that literally steals your soul if it flies through you. You can also use chakra chains similar to the adamantine chains used by the Uzumaki clan. This was used by Madara to capture the tailed beasts and feed them to the Ten-Tails. Finally, it can use the 6 paths of pain technique. All of these paths can be used on their own, such as how Madara preferred to do it. However, if you want something more durable than a shadow clone, the 6 paths of pain is the technique the Dark Alley wants you to go down. It allows you to take 6 dead bodies and resurrect them as empty vessels with which you can control and channel your other 6 paths. These paths of pain are harder to control, however, so generally the paths are filled with chakra receivers which appear like body piercings. By doing this, however, you can extend the range of your paths, which allows you to control them seamlessly and even use them in your stead. During the time he was alive, Nagato was left crippled and unable to defend himself, so he tended to use the 6 paths, particularly Yahiko, who was resurrected to be the vessel of the Diva Path, as the face of his organization. The downside to this ability is that when you channel your paths through the 6 paths of pain, you don't have access to them unless you retrieve them. Furthermore, your paths don't have access to other paths, just the one you gave them. So don't expect this to make you stronger. This just spreads your considerable power thinly across other vessels, which I believe is why Madara never used them. It does offer a boon though. In exchange for one having to spread their power thin, the user and each path, including summons, shares the same field of vision, meaning all paths of pain and their user can see everything the others see at the same time, which is good for scouting, gaining information, and other things. So that's probably worth it if you feel like you'll need a hand in battle. Might need to use a different face to hide your identity, or just think that you need about 6 extra sets of eyes. Besides these abilities, Rinnegan users gain something more, a special ability. Madara seemed to make it sound like 2 abilities when mentioning Sasuke's ability to teleport to wherever he wanted, hinting that Madara may also have this ability alongside his own limbo, but this was likely an error with the English translation. It's more than likely that you get only one ability. For Madara Uchiha, this ability is Limbo. In Japanese, however, he calls the ability Rinbo, which translates to Wheelgrave. This ability allows him to place shadow clones in an invisible dimension that can only be seen by other Rinnegan or sensed by those with 6-path Sage Mode. It's really just glorified invisibility, but it sure gets the job done. Sasuke, on the other hand, possesses the ability called Ameno Tajikara. Yes, I memorized it, I don't have to look it up just to say it. This ability allows Sasuke to switch positions with whatever he looks at. Urashiki was unique in that he possessed 2 abilities through his Rinnegan, which changed depending on the color he had. Granted, one was an ability other Otsutsuki have, Yomotsu Hirasaka, but the other occurred when his eyes shifted to blue. It allowed him to rewind time by a few seconds and make the proper decision. Momoshiki, much like Urashiki, possessed two techniques, which, along with what Madara said, suggests that Rinnegan users gain access to two techniques instead of one, and Sasuke was a special case because he only had one Rinnegan. Momoshiki's first Rinnegan possessed the ability to absorb chakra-based techniques and send them back stronger. With his other Rinnegan, he could turn people into chakra pills with which he could devour to absorb their youth, techniques, and chakra. It was this technique that allowed him to transform into either a monstrous red form in the movie or a sleeker white and black form in the manga and anime. Sadly, Pain didn't display any unique abilities. Despite possessing Madara's Rinnegan, he did not possess the ability to use Limbo, which it is explained that the user cannot draw out the full power unless they are the original user of the dojutsu, which Pain was not. Meaning Nagato's usage of the Rinnegan was far weaker than the full possibilities of it, which Madara could use at full power. But that right there, that is the full explanation of the Rinnegan. That was the hard part. Now we go into easier territory with the Sharingan and its Mangekyou variant. Mangekyou Sharingan. Also literally translated as the kaleidoscope copy wheel eye, the Mangekyou Sharingan essentially does the exact same thing as the standard Sharingan, but they do it better. The Mangekyou Sharingan gives you a certain number of abilities, depending upon how many eyes you have. For the most part, people generally awaken 2 of them. This means they get 2 unique abilities and a Susanoo. Starting off with what's common, the Susanoo. The Susanoo is an ability that allows one to create a giant avatar out of their own chakra. This avatar has many states of development. There's a version which barely even appears, such as a rib cage to protect the user, or even a partial skeleton. The better the user gets with it, the more that they can summon. Eventually, they can summon it with coverings and even a humanoid version. But the version everyone wants is the complete body Susanoo. This version most generally appears like a Tengu or a demon, and each Susanoo may come along with its own special weapons, such as a sword, or in Sasuke's case, Indra's arrow. However, it is possible to outfit your Susanoo with actual items, as was the case with Itachi, whose Susanoo possessed the 3 Imperial Regalia which was stated that he found. His personal Susanoo possessed the Yada Mirror, which was said to be capable of deflecting any attack, basically an unbreakable shield. Then he possessed the Blade of Tatsuka, which he could summon as a fiery blade out of the gourd it carried. This blade could seal people away. Lastly, he possessed the Magatama. Altogether, these things were stated to make Itachi's Susanoo invincible. The Susanoo was very versatile, and when used in conjunction with a tailed beast such as the Ninetales, it could coat the Ninetales in a form known as Majestic Armor Susanoo, serving the namesake purpose. But besides the Susanoo, for each Mangekyou Sharingan you awakened, you gained a single ability. For most people, this meant gaining 2 abilities besides their Susanoo. For Sasuke, these abilities were Amaterasu and Kagutsuchi. Amaterasu allowed him to create an unquenchable black flame that would burn until nothing was left. With Kagutsuchi, he could manipulate and shape the flame. Itachi, much like his brother, possessed Amaterasu in one eye, but in the other he possessed an ability called Tsukiyomi, which was a far more limited version of the ability the Rinne Sharingan possessed. Obito Uchiha, for a time, only possessed one Mangekyou Sharingan. Due to this, he could not use the Susanoo, though he believed that if he fought beside Kakashi, they might be able to do it together. In Obito's eye, he could utilize short-range Kamui, which he used to teleport and become intangible to all attacks. Kakashi possessed the other eye, which allowed him to use long-range Kamui, which allowed him to teleport things that he saw. Since this ability allowed access to the same dimensional space as the other eye, it was key to allowing Naruto to defeat Obito's ability by having his attacks teleported to where Obito was. Shisui's ability was the Koroama Tsukami, which he possessed in both eyes. The difference between the 2 abilities is unknown, save for that one of his eyes took an absurd amount of time to cool down. The reason why it needed to cool down? I don't know. Plot. Couldn't have it solve every problem. Now, his other eye could use Koroama Tsukami as well, but the cooldown was around 12 hours or so. This eye was eventually stolen by Danzo. The ability itself allows the user to cast a genjutsu so subtle that it tricks the victim into believing it's their idea. Consider it like Obi-Wan's Jedi mind trick, except it doesn't require your target to be stupid to work. Indra also possessed an ability called Hinokagutsuchi, which was basically just Sasuke's Amaterasu under another name. The biggest issue with the Mangekyou Sharingan, though, is that the abilities are so powerful that it actually damages the eye and causes it to go blind, eventually leading to the loss of power. The only people who are immune to this blindness are users of the Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, and for some reason Obito Uchiha. I mean, he spammed it and never even bled. It's believed that it may have been due to the regenerative factor of the Hashirama Senju cells in his body. But as for the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, that's something totally different. Also called the Choku Tomoe Sharingan, it is the result of what occurs when two close siblings who both possess Mangekyo Sharingan trade eyes. In doing so, their Sharingan awaken further, and the design within the eyes becomes straighter. Such as when Itachi has a curvy Mangekyo design, but upon going into Sasuke's head, they become straight and sit at the center of his flowery shape. That's Choku Tomoe Sharingan. Madara also possessed them. Essentially, this comes with a power boost and the ability to utilize the techniques of the Mangekyo Sharingan without strain or going blind. The process of gaining a Mangekyo was first started by Hagoromo, who nearly killed his brother. Indra copied this with his closest friends, and it became a dark ritual within the Uchiha clan, killing those you loved most for power. The death of a loved one is what awakens it, unless you're Sarada Uchiha. In that case, it's awakened by being minorly irritated that your boyfriend was kicked out and wanting daddy to fix it, and, well, I'll stop there. Anyway, the death of a close loved one results in the creation of a special chakra within the brain that transforms the Sharingan into its Mangekyo variant. It's by far my favorite dojutsu, as it's rarely ever the same between two people. The Sharingan. We reached the bottom of the barrel, the most watered down of all watered down variants. Even as weakened as it is, it's still preferred when compared to the Byakugan, whether that's because it's a jack of all trades or because of promise. It starts out as a single Sharingan. Look at it. Cute little baby Sharingan. Only got 1 comma. This version is the one that all Uchiha capable of awakening the Sharingan start with. Really, this dojutsu's abilities are simple: observation and genjutsu. It allows one to learn really quickly and even mimic actions and jutsu right on the spot. It gives you more reaction time, which allows the crafty ninja to guess what comes next, giving the dojutsu the illusion of being able to see into the future. Speaking of illusions, this dojutsu is capable of casting genjutsu on people. Some people are immune to genjutsu, but for those who aren't, by merely making eye contact, you can essentially lock them in their own head and force them to see and experience what you want them to. As a Sharingan user practices with their dojutsu, it eventually will evolve into a higher state, eventually becoming 2 Tomoe and finally 3. With each new Tomoe gained, the abilities get a buff. You see more quickly, you learn more easily, your reaction time increases, and the potency of your genjutsu rises. The more mature it is, the better it can do. However, it is possible to skip the process in general. If a Sharingan user with, say, 1 Tomoe witnesses the death of a loved one, it can actually awaken their eye into a Mangekyo Sharingan. And if that happens, their base Sharingan automatically gains a 3rd Tomoe. Nothing like the terror of war to make a child into a man in 2.5 seconds. But these aren't the only abilities that the Sharingan possesses. The Sharingan possesses 2 very secret and forbidden jutsu that are restricted for a particular reason. Each Sharingan, no matter the age or development, is capable of casting Izanagi and Izanami. Izanagi is an ability that fudges fate and causality. Basically, this means that if someone shoots you with Indra's arrow, you can just decide, I don't like that outcome, and not let it happen. This technique blurs the line between reality and illusion. Conversely, the other technique, Izanami, does the direct opposite by blurring the lines between illusion and reality. This technique was created as an inverse of Izanagi and specifically designed to counter it. Instead of changing fate, it decides it. By chaining together various actions, one can set markers and create an infinite causal loop, which presents itself as an inescapable genjutsu which will never end until the victim comes to the decision to accept whatever fate the caster decides. Generally, this was used to cause those who would try to escape death to accept it by making them relive it over and over again until they accepted it. Think of it like Gold Experience Requiem's ability, but more illusion and less brutal. These abilities are fantastic indeed, but they also possess a cost. Considering the fact that they are a form of yin-yang release, that is to say they're a 6 paths technique, a crude usage of the technique 6 paths creation of all things, they obviously must have a cost, since they're even more hacks than Mangekyo abilities. So the abilities cost you your eyesight. You lose your abilities and your eyesight permanently. Like, it doesn't come back unless very specific conditions are met, and those conditions are like, get the Rinnegan. And that's a feat in and of itself, as it requires someone to either gain 6 Paths Chakra, or to merge Indra's Chakra with Ashura's to create 6 Paths Chakra. And that's very impossible to do for the average person. So most people tend not to mess with it. Not unless you're Danzo, in which case you have a whole freaking arm full of eyeballs dedicated to it. But I mean, unless you're a genocidal maniac who's friends with a mad scientist, I highly doubt that you're gonna have the resources to do all of that. But alas, that is all the explanation you need to understand the Sharingan family of dojutsu to the greatest degree. You just got a PhD in ninja eyeballs from the University of Amagi subscribers. Wait, you're subscribed, right? Be sure to leave a comment below to tell us what you think and give us even more ideas of things that you'd like to see in the future.
Did you enjoy our video? Well, then be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.